All right. Well, thank you for being here. So I'm joined by Alysha Campbell. She's the founder and principal of CultureShift HR. I really like the name, by the way. Creating a culture of belonging through empathetic leadership. So Alysha Campbell is an accomplished and respected HR strategic leader with a decade of experience that encompasses all facets of human resource management, from executing successful multi-million-dollar workforce recruitment and optimization projects to spearheading employee culture initiatives. Alysha has truly seen and done it all in the HR space. Her passion for the industry has led her to start her own HR consulting and strategy agency, CultureShift HR. As founder and principal, Alysha uses her business acumen to help companies utilize and engage their best talent while creating purposeful work environments that help businesses grow and thrive. Through her experience and foresight in the Canadian, US, and international talent space, Alysha has developed an eye for talent engagement patterns and the resulting effects of culture. As a speaker and entrepreneur, Alysha partners with and teaches organizations her proven process on how to align their talent with corporate objectives to achieve more and increase profitability. So all of these things super important for HR. I'm really excited that you went out and started a business. It's not an easy thing to do. So good for you.
No, thank you.
That's amazing. Well, we're very honored that you could be here. I'm really looking forward to your talk today. And again, I'll be back towards the end to facilitate any questions that you may have.
Great.
Oh, there you go. I was just going to say you might have to share the application window, but you got it.
Awesome.
I'll leave you to it and I'll be back towards the end. Thanks, Alysha.
Thank you. For taking the time to spend time learning more about creating a culture of belonging through empathetic and inclusive leadership. So we're going to dive to talk about what is inclusive leadership, what happens when inclusive leadership falls short, why it's important, the traits of an inclusive and empathetic leader, how to relate and connect with your team. We'll do a quick recap and then Q&A. So what is inclusive leadership? So when you think about the word leadership, it's a word that really gets thrown around a lot. And when I was putting together this content, what was really important for me was really breaking down, what is it when we say having empathy? What does that mean? What does inclusive mean? How do we really start to make these words come alive and really start to make some meaning to what we're trying to do in the workplace? So the definition of inclusive leadership, when you break it down, it's effectively managing and leading a diverse group of people while respecting their differences and uniqueness in an empathetic way without bias. So when you think about those words, I really wanted to break down some key adjectives that are in this definition. So number one, diverse, differing from one another. So we're going to be leading a group of people who may not have many things in common, who may have varied backgrounds or varied experiences. So we need to understand that and be able to respect that. Leads right to respect. So due regard to the feelings, wishes, rights, and traditions of others. So if I'm supposed to be respectful of you and really understand the gravity of your, wishes and rights and traditions, I need to be able to get to know you. I need to have that camaraderie. I need to be able to have that trust so we can have that relationship and have that openness. Then we have uniqueness, the quality of being the only one of its kind. That's what leading a team is. It's unique. You have a wide and diverse group of individuals who are unique in their own right. So we need to understand what makes them unique and be able to relate to that in the right way. And then we have empathy. So the ability to understand and share the feelings of another. So when you're really being an empathetic leader, you're saying, I'm putting myself in your shoes. I may not have had the same lived or shared experiences, but I'm going to imagine that I have, and then using those feelings and the stories you share, understand what it's like and really have that empathy to really understand your position, understand where you're coming from, and how you use your different situations to be the person that you are. And then anti-bias. So going against the strong inclination of the mind or of a preconceived opinion about something or someone else. We all have biases. And what's really important is that we are aware of them so that when they come up, we're able to create the right thought patterns to disengage with biases. And all these amazing factors come together to create empathetic and inclusive leadership. And empathy and inclusiveness really go hand in hand, because you can't be inclusive of others and intentional about inclusivity if you aren't empathetic to how others' lived experiences and lives really come into play and really come into the picture of how they shaped who they are, how they make the decisions, and how they activate within the workplace. So how does inclusivity leadership manifest. So we see inclusive leadership really through the self-regulation and taking corrective action to ensure fair play. When you're an inclusive leader, you ensure that there is different processes and procedures that ensure that your team are able to show up and show out in the right way. It is not always a one-size-fits-all approach. Some individuals might be more audio learners or more visual learners. And so that's why when you do a training, you want to make sure that you're being amenable to all these different elements of how training can come to life, meeting the various training needs of your team. So it's understanding and being able to have that perspective to say, okay, does this really make sense? Is everybody going to be able to get on board in the way that I need them to connect with this content? It establishes transparent policies for making merit-based decisions about promotion, rewards, and task allocations. So when you're an inclusive leader, you want to be transparent. You want to show everybody, listen, it's not just a certain group of individuals who are getting a promotion or who are getting a raise, but this is our hiring policy. This is our promotion policy. And anybody who wants to put their hand up for an opportunity, there is a process that we go through to ensure that everybody is looked at and compared to in an equitable way. And not only in that fashion, but we also look at how is the work being distributed? How do I make sure that everybody's getting an opportunity to grow and really strive to be their best selves? And then ability to lead across cultural teams and seeking opportunities to learn about other cultures. If you're really going to take on the helmet of being an inclusive leader, you have to understand and really try to ground yourself within different cultures and understandings so that you can have more relatability to your team. And we relate to people all the time through similarities, through shared experiences. And so don't think that your shared experiences may be that much different than somebody else's. There might be a common denominator there that you can use to start a conversation, get to know somebody, and really start to build those real, authentic relationships. So being able to take that opportunity, using your empathy, you're going to be able to lead cross-cultural teams effectively well, because you're really coming from a position of, I want to understand who you are so I can be as supportive and as best leader to you as possible. So knowing that, okay, what inclusive leadership looks like, what happens when it falls short? So when we aren't inclusive leaders, employees don't reach their full potential. Employees get frustrated, they feel like they're being underutilized, they feel like they're constantly hitting a glass ceiling, and therefore they become disengaged. Strategies fall flat. Can you think about the time that we're in when we're dealing with talent shortages and we're trying to figure out, okay, how do we get more talent in the door? If we're not taking care of our employees that are already in the organization, that will leak out and other new hires will feel that as well. So we need to ensure that not only are we taking care of new employees that are, our current employees who are in the teams, but we're looking at our strategies and we're looking to think, okay, how does this affect all these other implementations we have in place, our projects, our policies, and ensuring that they all connect together. The general health and climate of the organization generally suffers. When you're not an inclusive leader, people feel left out. There's a saying that says diversity is a fact and inclusion is an act. You need to be very intentional when it comes to inclusion, because it's very easy through our biases to have the opposite happen. And so by being intentional, really setting the right ground and the right precedent to ensure that we are always and constantly thinking of things through our inclusive leadership so that these shortfalls don't happen. So when they do happen, this is how they can manifest. So we can see elements of tokenism, assimilation, and dehumanization. So tokenism comes with the intention of inclusion, but then organizations only recruit a small number of people from marginalized groups. This almost seems like they're going to meet an unsaid quote unquote minimum requirement. And I actually get this question a lot, especially with my clients who are looking to build out their D&I policies and strategies. And they're like, Alysha, in the beginning, like, we're being intentional about hiring. We're hiring more diverse candidates, but employees are feeling this is just an element of tokenism. So what do we do in that instance? And the response I always give is that tokenism is the effect of what diversity looks like in the workplace. However, it's through the culture of inclusivity that we create a culture of belonging. So what that essentially means is that in the beginning, we have to be intentional about our inclusivity. We have to be intentional about our diversity. And the reason is because there are processes and procedures in place that have prohibited that from happening. So by us being intentional and us making those right decisions, we are going to see an influx of diversity and inclusion in our organizations, but then we need to create the culture and the environment for that to thrive. If that doesn't follow suit, then yes, you are creating a workplace of tokenism. But if you're creating a workplace where there is equitable practices, there's transparency, employees of diverse backgrounds can feel supported, whether in whatever category of diversity they might fall in, whether it's through support groups, ERGs, affinity groups, your D&I committee, through those efforts and initiatives, that's when it becomes the belonging, culture of belonging versus tokenism. Assimilation. So that's when our minority employees really feel and observe that, their culture isn't the more dominant one. So they assimilate into the organization with the aim to not stand out. We don't want that to happen because we want varied backgrounds. We want people from diverse backgrounds because they're going to bring incredible ideas, thoughts, and work to our organization. So we need to make sure we're encouraging that diversity of thought. We're encouraging that diversity of experience because as an inclusive leader, that's what we need to be thinking about. How can I make sure that this person who may come from a different organization, who may come from a different cultural background, a different age category, can feel like they can actually contribute and add value and be a part of the team? And so that's where we don't want to focus on, making everybody kind of a replica of one another, but really starting to appreciate and highlight our differences so that as an inclusive leader, those differences are being brought to the table and are being utilized for the benefit of the team. Then we have dehumanization. So this is when employees get hired through the different diversity initiatives. They get settled into the organization and then they get treated like they don't have the same level of intelligence as their colleagues. So this can be a powerful form of collateral damage. And so this is where if you have any anti-bias training or any anti-racism training, this is really, really key because this happens through microaggressions. And so again, through our biases and through our own lived experiences, we have our own preferences. Maybe we have a preference for, people who went to Waterloo versus someone who went to U of T as an example. Those types of elements and those types of biases leak through our relationships and into our conversations, even when we're not aware that that is happening. So it's so important that we do bring in diversity into the organization and we're trying to be an inclusive leader, that we treat different experiences as the same value as one another, that one experience is not less than or not equal to another experience, but we respect it and we honor it for what it is and what it brings to the table. And that's when we really start to see the activation of our inclusivity within the workplace. And that's when you're really able as a leader to look at your team and really understand the strengths, the areas of opportunity, and get everybody to work that much more better. And through the lens of empathy, you're really able to humanize how you are as an individual. And that comes through in your leadership, because at that point, you're really trying to understand and connect people through a common purpose and a common goal, even though their backgrounds and experiences might be different. So why is inclusive leadership important? In today's day and age, and I think especially through the pandemic, we've seen that we are truly in a global era. So we have diverse customer base. We have customers we are serving literally all over the world 24/7. And we need to be a diverse company that reflects the diversity we serve in the world. If we are not reflecting at least some elements of our population or of our market base that we're trying to serve, there's going to be a disconnect. Clients and consumers will be able to tell through the authenticity of your product, of your service, that you really don't get them, that you really don't really relate and level to where they're at. And so when you're able to really make those two come together, you get a balance, which also becomes an incredible competitive advantage depending on the industry and service you provide. Also, inclusive leadership is the new standard of leadership. No matter what organization you go to, companies are talking about this. They're trying to figure out, how can we make our leaders more effective? How can we make them more inclusive? And so thinking that this is going to be a flat element is definitely not the case. This is the new standard of leadership, and understanding its principles and fundamentals will ensure that you're set up for success. And then it's a major contributor to organizational success as well. There are tons of metrics out there about how diversity and inclusivity really allows to take your organization to the next level. There's increased productivity, profit margins, revenue, when diversity increases in your organization. So if you're able to really hone in and harness the power of this, there are incredible things that your organization will be able to accomplish. So what does really an inclusive leader look like, and what are some of those traits we want to look out to? So firstly, commitment. We need to have a commitment to improve inclusion. We need to be intentional. We really need to create a plan with goals and really outline what are my faults as a leader, what's any biases that I have, so that I can make a plan to ensure that they don't interfere with my leadership style. And that falls into being aware of our biases. We need to be constantly questioning our assumptions. Why is it that we assume certain things that we do without giving them a chance to speak for themselves or to really understand the intention behind certain assumptions? Cultural intelligence. We need to really understand and be able to lead cross-cultural teams. So doing research, understanding what that looks like, understanding personally what that means for you so that you are set up for success as an inclusive leader. And then, of course, open-mindedness, combating the authoritative style of leadership. Being an empathetic leader isn't about being, my way or the highway. Again, it's about meeting people where they're at and really understanding who they are so that they can be their best selves. And so that you as the leader can really provide the tools, the facilitation, so that they can then show up the way that you need them to for you and the organization. It takes courage. We all don't have all the answers. As easy as it would be to know, okay, what are the things or what are all the right things to say? Unfortunately, that's not how it works. So we need to have the courage to say, you know what, I don't know this answer right now, or I may not be fully adept in this area, but I am committed to learning and I'm committed to finding out what that answer would be. And then that leads to curiosity. Open your mind to new ideas, different perspectives, because that's how we learn about one another. That's how we combat our biases. And that's truly how we start to create that culture of belonging for our staff. And then collaboration, empowering people to build on each other's ideas. We hire all different types of individuals because we want them to bring their best selves to work. They can't bring their best selves to work if they're scared or hesitant to bring those ideas forward. So we need to ensure we're creating not only that culture of belonging, but that openness of a fearfulness to say, bring your ideas to the table. Let's, pick through these and understand how these ideas came to light. What do you need to get your idea off the ground? Or how can we make this our next big thing? Collaboration is so key for being an inclusive leader. And then, of course, it all goes with people. We need to be able to ensure that we put our teams first. We understand what it means to really understand who our team are, what they're strives to do, and how we can create a culture, a support system, and a work environment that allows that to really come to life in the best way possible. So how do you begin to really relate to your team and really connect with them on that one-to-one level as an inclusive leader? Because it all comes back to engagement. So if you have a high engaged culture and a high engaged team, you are going to harness the benefits of who they are in every single element of their work. So this is how we begin to really understand and relate to our team. We need to have regular communication. So depending on the size of your team, it might be too large to do weekly or bi-weekly one-to-ones, but having opportunities where once or twice a month, the team gets together. They talk about priorities. They talk about things that are coming down the pipeline. They talk about problems, key ideas, how we're going to solve things. That regular communication is absolutely imperative to being an inclusive leader, because there's nothing worse than feeling left out of the loop or not feeling included in what's going on. So that regular communication really just helps keep everybody on the same page, allows everyone to really feel like they're owning their part of the equation and really keeping everybody accountable to what they're set out to do. Go beyond cliche questions. Really get to know your team by understanding, who are they? What do they like? Their dislikes? Where did their family come from? How are they able? What type of leadership style do they like, or management style do they like? Where do they see themselves? Going beyond just those surface level questions or how they approach challenges can really create that relationship of trust and vulnerability, which is really key when you're trying to be an inclusive leader. And then you need to help your team members realize their potentials. And we can only do that through number one and number two by truly understanding who our team are. So if someone has a desire or a goal to reach to a new level within their career, what does that look like for them? What support do they need? What area does that interest to them? How can they maybe shadow or get other experiences that help reach their goals and their potential? So understanding what that could look like and using performance reviews, using other elements within the HR cycle to really hone in on creating that plan can go so far, really trying to create that inclusive culture. And then recognize and celebrate There is nothing worse than having a milestone go by and no one acknowledge it. So even within your team, whether you're eventually back in person or virtually, taking the time to shout out, call out, celebrate key milestones within your team is going to be imperative, because that's when you start to feel that area of belonging. That's when you start to feel like, you know what, I'm a part of a team, I'm a part of something bigger than myself, and I'm so glad that I am. And so by recognizing that person and their accomplishments, you're saying, I see you for all the great things that you are. I see you for everything that you bring to the table, and we are so thrilled that we have you with us, helping us, building with us. So don't underestimate how a little bit of recognition and celebration go a long way for your team. And then always create the time. We cannot be too busy for our teams. Our teams are living, breathing, organisms that are literally helping to shape the culture, the business, and the success you're trying to create. So if they need some time to talk, if they need some time to understand their next career goals, if they need time to understand how they can improve, take the time to talk, understand where they're coming from, understanding how to relate to them so that they're getting what they need so that they can perform at their best. So as a recap, as the world continues to evolve with more emphasis on inclusion, so are the needs of inclusion in the corporate space. As I mentioned, this isn't going anywhere. We need to really understand the fundamentals of empathy and inclusive leadership so that we're set up for success. Inclusive leadership plays a key role in driving positive change, and this is really becoming a core competency within progressive companies. So understanding and really learning and taking the time to really own this and hone this skill is going to not only help you in your career, but also be key for your organization. This isn't an easy task, but it is rewarding and fulfilling. Thinking about learning a new language, it's frustrating in the beginning. You can't get the words right, it seems overwhelming. But when you start to take things step by step, one goal at a time, one article, one podcast, one conversation at a time, things start to get easier and become more fluid. And that's when you really start to see the great work take off and take flight. And that's just going to make you want to do it more and more. Accountability is key, because we can't afford to ignore how key accountability is, as it helps us to create the required outcomes we're seeking. So we need to make sure that we're holding our teams accountable and that our team has the freedom to hold us accountable as well as leaders, because that's when this is really going to come full circle and we're really going to start to see this come to life. And this can only be effective as well as you're able to connect with your team. If your team feels disconnected from you, if they don't feel like they understand the purpose and the vision that you've created and for their work, they're going to feel like they're not being sufficient enough and that they don't have a direction. Direction and purpose is key for engagement. So we want to make sure that you're connecting with your team to relay those informations. And then, of course, positive enforcement always wins. Let's make sure we're acknowledging, we're clapping, and we're celebrating those who continue to do amazing work for our teams, amazing work for our organizations, and really highlighting what that can mean as we grow out our teams. Wonderful. Well, that is all the content I have for this afternoon. Thank you, everybody, again, for taking the time to show up. Would love to take the time to open the floor for any questions and discussion. Oh, and someone called out, Martina, thank you for calling it out. I appreciate it. All right, any questions, thoughts? Sorry for the background noise, it is busy. You are correct. It is sad that we have to call it being human. And I have that conversation a lot where we have to remind ourselves that, that we're not machines. We are here to do work and to collaborate and to do something amazing. But the work can get overwhelming and we just kind of go with blinders on. So it's so important that we reflect and remind ourselves we are human. We need to treat others as such as well. Okay, we are trying to do a culture change at our plant. Some key management are old school way of dealing with employees. I'm trying as HR to explain why empathy is important. Any tips? Helen, great question. I would say understanding empathy, some key elements you want to highlight is really breaking down what empathy looks like. Because people, I would say old school management thinks empathy is like, oh, there's no place for empathy or vulnerability in the workplace. I don't want to talk about feelings. It's really understanding that that isn't just what empathy is, but it's being able to relate to other people on a deeper level and really getting to know them for who they are and really getting to put yourself in their shoes or in their position to really deepen the relationship. So I think breaking down and maybe trying to take out some of the stigma of empathy would be helpful. I think doing a training on what emotional intelligence is. There's incredible content out there. Also, there's a book, Emotional Intelligence 2.0, that I've recently reread. That's a great starting point as well. But I think just it's going to really start by debunking a lot of the myths that management has, and really just helping to provide them the tools and that reinforcement so they can create the good habits. Yes, absolutely. It has to start from the top down. If the leadership isn't on board with empathy and inclusive leadership, then the rest of the staff won't be either. So it really does need to funnel its way downwards or from the top. No problem. Anyone else?
Hi, Alysha, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Hey, yeah, I just want to jump on and say thanks for your presentation. It was really great. Yeah, if anyone has any questions, feel free to pop them in chat here. But I just had a quick question for you. What's the best way for people to get in touch if they want to follow up?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll put my info in the chat. But you can reach me at Alysha at cultureshifthr.com. My site is also CultureShift. And you can Alysha M. Campbell on LinkedIn. You can find me there as well.
Awesome, great. And just another quick follow-up question, I guess. What's a key takeaway that you want someone to get from your presentation today?
I think understanding that this can seem overwhelming, being empathetic, being inclusive, but really don't get wrapped up in, oh my goodness, there's so much I need to do. Really try to figure out how do I need to improve? Make this journey personal for you. Don't just see this as this is just something I need to do just so I'm being compliant or to check off a checkbox. But really understand, like, am I a good leader? What does good leadership mean to me or for me? And how can I start to shape and change the way that I lead and my approach to not only be the best leader I can be, but to make sure my team is supported and well utilized that it can be. We're only as good as the roots, in the tree, so to say. And it's so important that if there is, combobulation within the team or there's no synergy, you have to look at where that type of behavior, where those types of traits are being stemmed from. And so understanding that you have a pivotal part in the culture and the way that your team operates, and understanding the responsibility and accountability of that is going to be really, really, really key. So don't be overwhelmed. Take it piece by piece, but please ensure that you do this journey.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. Well, yeah, thanks again for your presentation. It was great to have you back. Just to let you know, and everyone watching as well, so there is a recording available. So if you'd like a copy, I can certainly send that to you. And if anyone else would like a copy, certainly feel free to get in touch with myself or Alysha. But thanks again. It was a really great presentation.
Awesome, Alex. Thanks so much. Have a great day, everyone. Bye.
Bye.